And so it's these sorts of labels and categories that try to box us in and take away our individuality and our freedom. And so many existentialists reject labels and categories. One of my favorite Kierkegaard quotes is, "If you label me, you negate me." Okay, right? Because once you put a label on this, you don't have to deal with this. You can deal with your label that you've put warning, danger, do not open, and you put it up on that dangerous shelf, right? Or if it's someone that's resonating with you, you're just like good, noble, true, pure, and you put them there. But think about it. For years, I wouldn't even associate or let people call me a Christian. And it's not because I was ashamed of Jesus. It's because I was ashamed of what the word Christian had come to mean in our culture and society. And I knew if people asked me what religion I was, and if I said Christian, they were immediately just going to put that Christian label on me, put me on that shelf in their mind, and then not have to deal with me or what I believed, because they already knew what Christian meant, at least in their head. And so I started to tell people I was a follower of the way. And then if they really cared, they would ask, what way? And now we're having a conversation as I'm talking about the Jesus way. I haven't just been categorized and labeled and judged, basically, on something that may have nothing to do with me. I think now it's not so much Christian in our culture as maybe evangelical is taking on that. That sort of, when a lot of Americans hear evangelical, they're not thinking about grace and faith and love, they're thinking about right-wing politics. And that's a problem if that's not where you are, right? Or not what evangelical means to you. But how do you fight that cultural usage? Part of how I do it is trying to come up with weird, almost antithetical labels. Like I wrote a blog a while back called California Christian. Well, what does that mean? Right? See, I don't mind calling myself a California Christian because now people have to ask if they want to know what that means. And I see it very different. It's kind of eclectic, little bits and pieces, more open-minded, inclusive, tolerant. Those would be things. Now, are there dangers to that? Absolutely, right? You have pros and cons with these different things. But this idea, stop labeling other people, and certainly don't let other people label you. Make them deal with you as it's part of why I look the way I do. Because if people want to get to know me, they have to get past all of this. Right? Say, I met a lot of, I like to call them fashion punks, and I know that's awful, I'm labeling them, but they're not punk subculturally, and like they're raging against society and authority and all that. They just like the piercings and the leather and the studs and the spiked hair, and that's why I call them fashion punks instead of actual like political, socio-political punks. But what I find with a lot of young people, or any kind of person that has an extreme look, whether big spacers or piercings or face tattoos or whatever, I often take it as a challenge. It's like, are you willing to get past this to what's inside? And often I would encourage you, take the risk. It's often really worth getting to know what kind of person is in there and why they're putting up all this stuff. And I personally am attracted to those sorts of people. So rejects labels, categories.